What's going on, everyone? So, reports have came out, per Hoops Habit, that the San Antonio Spurs are already kind of, considering their rotation and their starting units and stuff like that, primarily because of Luke Kornet. Luke Kornet was one of the better acquisitions that the Spurs were able to land this past offseason. Great pickup. Brian Wright himself even talked about how he wants this team to have that defensive identity, right? That he wants this team and this organization to kind of have that defensive culture, that defensive mindset. Makes sense. You have Victor Wembanyama, who's the best defensive player in the league and is going to win many, and I mean many, Defensive Player of the Year awards, right? As long as he's playing 65 games a year, he probably wins it every year. The years that he doesn't win it is probably just voter fatigue, right? And they're just like, we can't give it to him for a 10th straight season, right? Like, I can see stuff like that happening, but it makes sense that you'd want kind of this defensive unit be one of the better defensive teams. You have Victor Wembanyama as he kind of continues to grow and blossom as an offensive player. De'Aaron Fox come in. He's one of the best fourth quarter players, one of the best clutch players in all of basketball every year. So you have kind of potentially this balance in this version. And Luke Kornet can kind of fill into this. He was top 5 in effective and defensive field goal percentage. So, basically players on Luke Kornet as the primary defender could not score on him. It's basically where that goes. And he did a great job of protecting the rim and making sure that people didn't score at the rim. So to have a guy like a Luke Kornet, like that was a big thing, was that like when Wemby went to the bench, the defense just fell apart, right? Well, now you have a guy in Luke Kornet who can clean things up, who can defend at the rim, who can, match up with, different types of looks and defensive schemes and kind of be that backline defense for you in your front court. I think that could go a long way for this Spurs team. I've even talked about, right, in the past that I wouldn't hate having Wemby at the 4 and Luke Kornet at the 5. And just good luck scoring on that. Good luck scoring around the rim. Good luck, Wemby and him being the help defender, him being able to close out on the perimeter, Luke Kornet being able to be that rim protector. It's hard when Wemby's, he's sliding into the forward. He still has to kind of keep an eye on the rim and do that. But if you have that defender that can come in and block shots and be that interior presence, I just think now Wemby can kind of focus more on the perimeter and then still be that help defender and just kind of make the reads and play kind of that free safety role where he's able to kind of gauge how does he want to react, right? And I think that could go a long way for this Spurs team. And I've seen people, like the usual pushback is like, we've seen Wemby, play the power forward position, and it's like, and it didn't work out. Well, it didn't work out with France. One, it's almost completely different game, right? FIBA basketball, there's different rules, there's all kinds of different things that you can't do in the NBA. Two, he's playing alongside Rudy Gobert, right, who is probably the worst offensive center in all of basketball. I mean, it helps when you have a guy that can score outside of like 3 feet from the basket, right? Which Luke Kornet, I mean, he's not this like offensive savant, but he is capable of scoring the basketball, right? So you'd have a little more versatility than that. And then, when you're talking about Zach Collins, it's like, dude, that guy was like unplayably bad for us, right? Which is crazy because he was like exactly what this team needed in Chicago. Right? It was like, man, if you get that slot alongside Wemby, like that could be something great. But Zach Collins just wasn't very good for the Spurs. Right? And even when Wemby was off the court, so it wasn't like a Wemby, Zach Collins, just that pairing doesn't work. Like even when Zach Collins like came in for Wemby, it was terrible and looked terrible. So I just think if you find that right fitting, that right slot, plus Wemby wants to take 10 threes a game. So if he's going to do that, it'd be nice to kind of have that guy on the inside that can help offensive rebound and, be that interior presence and, help get second chance points and stuff like that and get putbacks and all of that. I don't hate the idea at all of Luke Kornet kind of being a fixture in the starting unit. It doesn't have to be something that you do every game. I mean, unless it just like really works, if it works that well, especially now that you have Kelly Olynyk who can slot in and play either the 4 or the 5 for you, you have that big man rotation where it'd be fine. But, I'm okay too if it's kind of just based on matchups, right? So you're playing, say Denver and you don't want, it's like, do we really want Wemby getting banged up against Jokic? Right? No, throw Kornet out there, let him bang with the big boys, right? Keep the wear and tear off of Wemby, right? Or you're playing, a Memphis, right, with, Zach Edey and a, Triple J. It's like, okay, well then throw Luke Kornet on Zach Edey and then throw Victor Wembanyama on Triple J. Or, same thing with the Thunder. When the Thunder are running Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, put Wemby on Chet, put Luke Kornet on Isaiah Hartenstein. And you can kind of match up accordingly. You're playing a team like the Warriors. It's like, okay, let's go with Wemby at the 5 and then like a Barnes at the 4 or whatever, right? Just to better match up and their spacing and all that stuff, right? Like, so you can kind of mix and match according to your matchup or who your opponent is, right? You don't have to be necessarily like one-dimensional, like I said, unless it is that good and it's like, hey, let's make teams kind of adjust to us rather than us adjusting to them. If that duo and that pairing down on the inside is really that good for you, then, like, why mess with a winning formula, right? Why try to change what ain't broke? Use that to your advantage. But it is nice to have that luxury. I think Luke Kornet, regardless, is going to be game-changing for the Spurs because, again, he can be that rim protector when Wemby's out. If Wemby goes to the bench and gets some rest, or he just gets the night off, right? Like, it's like, hey, tonight he's gonna miss. Luke Kornet steps in, plays that starting role for you. And obviously he's not Wemby, but he's a guy that can still protect the rim, still be a good quality defensive piece, so you can still maintain a level of defense and still maintain at least somewhat of that standard that you're trying to build and adjust, rather than, it's like Wemby goes to the bench or, gets the night off, and the Spurs are one of the worst defensive teams in all of basketball. It's like, no, like, you have, like, Wemby is going to help and mask a ton for you. We've already seen it over the last 2 seasons, right? He is so good defensively and athletic and versatile and can run out, and he's so quick-footed, right, and long, and covers so much ground. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, he covers, like, an insane amount of ground. I don't think I've ever seen anybody, like, standing under the basket, block a shot, and then be able to close out all in, like, in the same sequence. Because he's, like, and block the shot out of the perimeter because he's just so long. He's there before, like, you catch that ball, and you already got this, like, massive hand in your face. You're just like, wow. He's just so long, so lengthy, so quick-footed. We've seen players literally have like wide open lanes. Wemby's back's turn, and they'll just like beeline it out just because his presence alone, right? Like is game changing. So you're going to have a good defense. You just need the complementary pieces, but you also need that guy that can come in, plug in, play a role for you, whether it's in the starting unit or it's in a backup role or whatever, right? If I'm Mitch, I'm experimenting early on. Try different looks, try different, like, what does this big man unit look like? What does it look like with Kornet and Wemby, right? Especially early in the season. Kind of gauge and see, how do you want this team to be? What do you want this team identity, right? Like, how does this unit look? How does this unit look? So on and so forth. So that way you can make educated, calculated decisions. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.